Hey, readers and writers.
Welcome to episode 101 of Read and Write, where we're going to talk about.
Origin stories!
In case we haven't met before, I'm Deb.
And I'm Jocelyn, and this is our podcast about what we're reading
What we're writing.
and everything in between.
Now that wasn't so hard.
I've only been practicing for months, Deb. You have no idea.
Okay, so we're talking about origin stories today. And we thought we were going to be a little meta and tell you about our own origin stories, because wouldn't that be fun? And I'm going to let Jocelyn start.
Thank you so much. I was literally just saying I love talking about myself. So thank you for allowing me to kick it off. I think a lot of writers share similar stories and probably similar stories to mine. I've always been a pretty imaginative kid. My siblings and I would play all kinds of made-up games, and my parents read to us a lot, of course, when we were little, and I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. Also, the fact that my mom is a librarian, and I am also a librarian now,
of course. Your mom gives the best book recommendations ever.
She's really good, yeah.
She's given us 2 or 3 now, and some of them have become my favorite books.
Yes, absolutely. Just imagine growing up with that. I mean, every time I talk to her on the phone, even, now, she's always like, oh, I just read this book. You have to read it. It's amazing. And it is. So it's always a great resource.
Well, meanwhile, on my side, my dad was into Dungeons and Dragons when I was really little, like 3, 4 kind of thing. So I grew up in that fantasy, like really heavy, like just immersed in a fantasy world. And I would go outside and like act out my own stories afterwards.
That's perfect. I mean, one of the things as an adult that really kind of like lit the fire inside of me for writing again or just story creation again was Dungeons and Dragons. I had never played it. Yeah, it really surprised me, actually. I hadn't played it when I was younger, and then my brother got really into DMing a few years ago, and so we would start doing sibling games, and just being back in that world building space when you're also kind of improvising, but then you can build on a character and bring that over from game to game. That was kind of nice. It kind of felt like, because I had left writing for a while, and that was kind of a nice way to ease back into it, and it surprised me in how much it inspired me to think about story again.
I could see that. I remember when I was younger, like we're talking like 11, 12, I would read some of my dad, and he had Dungeons and Dragons, like the novels. And I would close the book and I'd think, well, what would my character look like? And what would they do? And I had all these ideas because, I mean, I've never actually played Dungeons and Dragons. I always tried to get people to play it, but then everybody's like, no, that's dorky. I don't want to do that.
Oh, I love it.
But yeah, I would totally try to imagine my own character at that point.
How young did you start writing down stories? Do you remember?
I started making up stories long before I started writing them down. The first story I remember writing down was probably 5th grade, so probably about 10, 11.
Yeah.
It was a really awful, basically kind of like a fan fiction with I don't even remember his name now. The kid from like SQUADCAST. Everybody had a crush on him like in the early 90s. But basically that's what it was. Jonathan something. I think he died or committed suicide or had a car accident or something like in the 2000s or something. Was he also the guy
who played Huck Finn in the Jonathan Taylor Thomas, Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn movie?
Possibly. I don't think I ever watched that. But
I was super into that kid.
that was the first thing I remember writing was basically like a fan fiction, and I was like in 5th grade.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's really embarrassing to admit this in public.
That was going to be another question, though. I was going to ask you, like, when was the first time you felt embarrassment about your stories? Like, have you ever felt embarrassed when someone discovered something you were writing?
I feel embarrassed about my fan fiction when I was 11, yes. I've been writing for a long time now, like easily since college, just all the time. But I'm embarrassed if people know I'm writing because I think they're always going to want to
Mm.
read it, and I'm kind of like, oh God, that's so personal. I mean, which I
Yeah.
want to be a published writer, and that's so
I
contradictory.
know it's something you have to really kind of beat down inside of you, but writing really is very personal.
Uh huh.
And I mean, I'm sure we'll talk a lot about this as we continue this ongoing podcast conversation, but I've had a lot of bad experiences when it comes to sharing my writing. I've been in a lot of toxic spaces when it comes to writing, and that's something that
Ooh,
we
that's
can
not good.
unpack later. Yeah, it's definitely
Right.
something I want to talk about at some point. And so it is very challenging to share something that I've been working on, something that I feel like is good, that felt good to write, that I was in a groove, and then,
Have
just,
someone tear it apart.
yeah, and not in a kind way, not in the way that it needs to be.
Okay. I don't think I've ever had that exact experience, which I'm so sorry you had that, by the way.
Well, it's called
Uh,
film school.
oh. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Ugh.
But I've had a lot of beta readers in the past who have just basically ripped my work a new one, and I thought it was great, which
Hmm.
in the long run, that made me a better writer because they
Yes.
taught me some things like where a certain comma goes, just
Hmm.
stupid things like that that you don't really think about it. But I had some
Hmm.
really excellent beta readers, and they did their jobs really well, and it made me better in the long run.
Yes, yes. And that's exactly what a true critique should do, and when you do find those beta readers and those critique partners and those workshop partners who do that for you, that who elevate you and teach you the hard lessons, but in a way that allows you to grow and not be
Hmm.
scared to share in the future, that is such a blessing, such an important thing to hold on to.
It's a good thing to like bounce off of, especially if you
Hmm.
have a good writing partner, which I don't currently have a good writing
Hmm.
partner, which Jocelyn, why aren't we writing partners?
I'm a lone wolf, baby.
But once you find that good writing partner, it's really good sometimes just to bounce ideas off of like, hey, I did
Yes.
half of this chapter and I'm unsure about it. What's an outside opinion of it?
Yes, yeah. And we
Like,
should. We
do
totally
this
should
sound
do
like it's
that.
moving in the right? Yeah, we totally should. I don't know why we
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, I
Except that
feel
you have
like
5,000 projects and you
I
never have time.
well, every day I take the axe to another one. So eventually it'll be a clear field, and we'll be able to actually like have some fun creatively together. Not that, I mean, this is fun, but this is definitely more of a structured space, I'd say, than like our creative writing space might be. But okay, so I have another question for you then, in terms of like
Okay.
kind of feeding into the origin story. When was the first time, if you remember, feeling really proud about your writing?
Oh God, all of it.
Oh,
I've
that's
loved
such a
every
beautiful
word I've ever
answer.
written.
Oh, I love that so much. Oh, that's so
I'm
sweet.
always proud of what I do, even if it's
Oh,
terrible. And even if I look back later and it's terrible, like I might not be proud of it later, but as I've written it, I'm like, damn, that's good.
oh, that is so refreshing to hear, I have to say,
Oh,
because like
really?
all of my moments are based on other people. Like I've the one time I remember feeling like really proud was when I was an editor for a magazine in college, one of our campus magazines, and I was having a tough time in the position, and it was kind of weird. I never trained as an editor. This was just something I kind of picked up to help fill in, and I
Uh-huh.
enjoyed doing it, but it's not my strong suit. Like, I'm not an
Hmm.
editor. I'm actually horrible at it. But
I tried to
someone
be. I used to try to be a beta reader to high school authors, like just donate my time.
Oh, yeah.
It was hard.
Yeah,
Like
it's really
I learned that
challenging.
I'm not built on the other end. I'm a good creator.
Mhm.
I'm not a good teacher.
Yeah, yeah. And so as I was struggling with this position, this kind of like, extracurricular thing that I was doing, someone else in the editing room, another editor, turned to me one day when he and I were putting in long hours on the weekend, and he was like, "Jocelyn, you are a good editor. You are. You guide people." And it made me feel
Oh, that's really
so
nice.
good. Yeah, I'd never gotten a compliment like that before, and it came out of nowhere. And I was just like, "Whoa, that was a big boost." And
It's
to
like,
this
thank you.
day,
That made my day.
right? Yeah. And I mean, I'm telling you, it made my life, because to this day, when I need a boost, I think back on that moment. So if any listeners out there are thinking about like ever complimenting someone out of the blue, just do it, because
Oh,
it will mean a lot to them.
absolutely. Like, and a completely unrelated note to reading and writing. I'm currently doing a really heavy exercise regimen.
Hmm.
And every time I see someone else outside exercising, I just want to like cheer them on because I know how
Yes.
good it feels for me. So absolutely, if you want to give a compliment to somebody, don't swallow it. Do it because it's going to make them feel better.
No one's going to think you're weird, and
No,
you
they
might
might think you're
feel,
weird, but they're going to love it
but they're
anyways.
going to love it anyway. Exactly. Like it might feel a little awkward, but the more you do it, the more it won't feel awkward anymore to compliment people. Yeah. It's tough cuz feeling proud as a writer. I mean, I feel like I've been writing since I could write, just silly stories. Some of them were also kind of fanfic vibes of other stories that I really
Now that
liked,
I've
or
shared that, I'm never going to
movies.
live it down.
Well, I think it's pretty, shared experience. We get
Aw.
it. But I've been writing for a really long time. I think like the first story I remember writing was Sir Applegate, and it was the tales of this goofy knight who would go around, doing knightly things. And I filled up this giant notebook, and I was super young. I was probably like in third or
This
fourth
sounds
grade.
adorable, by the
It,
way.
yeah, I wish
Do you
I
have
still.
this story somewhere?
No, here's the tragedy, Deb. This is my first experience with basically like when your computer crashes and whatever you're working on is completely destroyed and your hard drive is
Uh-huh.
wiped out. So I had it in this notebook and it was big. Like I've been working on it for a long time. I left it on the back of my dad's car and he drove off to go do a field band thing in some town way off wherever. And it fell off the back of the car at some
Oh
point,
my
and
God.
it disappeared. It's gone forever. And I just cried and cried, very much like when Joe March discovered that Amy burnt her manuscript out of rage.
Uh-huh.
Like, that's the sorrow that I felt. Oh, it was so sad. But, I remember writing a romance, a period piece romance set during the Revolutionary War called Don't Die on Me in like seventh grade. And I would sit in the gym at recess time or whatever, like lunch period, free time, and I'd write this thing in a notebook. And of course, seventh grade boys will be seventh grade boys. They'd rip the notebook out of my
Uh-huh.
hands and start reading it. And
Oh my
that
God.
was.
And you were writing a romance of all
Yes.
things.
Oh my God. It was so mortifying. And just like, yeah, writing is just so personal. And
Uh-huh.
so I'm excited with like my re-entry into writing after many years of not writing to feel like less of that, to feel more confident, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm trying to get over I don't want to call it embarrassment, but I'm trying to get over my shyness of sharing my writing. Like you've read a little bit, and I've let my husband read some of them, and I'm trying to be more open. And when he asks me questions, I'm just not saying, "Oh, it's good, it's fine." I'm actually trying to say, "Oh, well, I did this in this chapter, and this character finally did this, but I'm having a problem with this." I'm trying really hard to be more open about it, just
Yeah.
so I don't know. I'm not closed up about it, and it's not all in my head.
It's so challenging because in a lot of the ways it feels like an open wound
It
because
does.
we're still exploring things as writers ourselves. So, it's not to us, it doesn't feel like cut and dry fact or plot point or whatever. It's still
Right.
very nebulous.
And it feels so much like a failure. Like when he comes back and he'll be actively listening, and like a couple weeks later he'll come back. It's like, oh well, what happened with this? I'm like, oh, I scrapped that 2 weeks ago. It wasn't working.
Yeah.
It feels like admitting failure.
Yeah, it does. I mean, that's writing too. I mean, the amount that we delete, the amount that we
Oh my
set
God.
aside, it's just we would have
I've
20
definitely
books by
deleted
now.
more than exists on my current
Absolutely.
story.
Yes. 100%. Oh, the cutting room floor. We're drowning in it.
I used to use Scrivener, and it would save all of those like variations of it, and it was kind of depressing to go back and like find what I had written and then deleted. Although it was really helpful when I was like, man, that thing I wrote 4 weeks ago would have been perfect right in here. And I could dig
Oh,
it
that
out.
is nice. Yeah. I used to use Scrivener like back in the day, back when I was like, when we were living in the same area. And I didn't get that comfortable with it. And then I got a new computer and I didn't reinstall it. So maybe I should revisit it and check it out because it seems
Maybe.
like it has a lot of fun functionality.
It was good. I don't want to say anything bad about Scrivener. It was good for what it does. I have ended up moving away from it just personally. Just I found something else that fit my style better. But it's definitely a good program.
That's something we should definitely talk about, like do an episode on talking about the tools that we use
to do the
actual writing.
100% totally could work that in somewhere.
Yeah.
The stories I have to tell about the different programs I've used.
It would be cool to share that.
So let's talk about our own characters' origin stories. Jocelyn, I don't actually know much about your current work because you've been so cagey about it.
Yes.
What are you currently working on?
Oh, yay. This really will be the most that I talk about it. As you know, Deb, I have a degree in screenwriting, and that's what most of my work kind of in, the past 10 years has been in script
You are
format.
a screenwriter, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was.
Okay.
And
I'm saying you are. For the sakes of the podcast,
Sure.
You're a screenwriter.
Frankly, technically I am.
You are.
That's what,
yeah. You may not have sold anything, but you are. If you are actively writing a screenplay, you are a screenwriter.
Well, I'm not actively writing a screenplay. That's the fun twist. I know.
Don't throw this stuff at me.
I took you down a road.
Okay. So character origin stories. Getting back on track.
Okay. Yeah. So
tell me your character and how they came to be.
I'm actually working on a set of short stories that are inspired by the Finger Lakes region of New York. For folks who don't know, that's where I grew up. And so the story I'm working on right now has the main character is in her early 20s. She's a little lost. And in the story, she experiences
lost like she's discovering who she is, or she's physically lost in a location.
Well, she's mostly lost discovering who she is.
Okay.
And she experiences like a pretty phenomenal thing, and that kind of, will guide her eventually. But when I think about origin stories for my characters, I'm not somebody who sits down and hashes out an in-depth origin story. I will do things like I'll get to know my character. Like I might make a playlist that they would have on their Spotify, or I might make like a dessert that I think they might enjoy. I'll think about the things that they like to engage with, and I'll think about maybe different kinds of slang they might use or the clothes they might wear, just to try to get to know who they are in that way. And then I think about their motivation and their history. But as everybody will learn as we continue this ongoing conversation, I am very much a pantser. I will just jump right into something. So the character usually will come out as I'm exploring the entirety of the story. So I'll get like that spark of inspiration. Yeah, and I'll just like start going, and then the character either successfully or unsuccessfully will reveal themselves to me.
You know what I found actually, well, at least for me, what I found that helps for me is when I'm working on the backstory of a character or just trying to discover who this character is, I write a couple like very short stories about them.
That's usually
first person, so I can get in their head. But I find that helps for me a lot. It gets them out, and things just kind of evolve from there usually.
Yeah. I think that's a really smart move, because then you're not devoting yourself to 50,000 words of something, and that can be very difficult.
It's something, I don't know if it's another podcaster or someone I was watching on YouTube. I do all kinds of writing things I just kind of listen to usually in the background when I'm like washing dishes or something ridiculous like that. But I remember someone saying like, figure out the important moments of your character's life and then write them down. And I kind of took that to heart, and it's been a couple years since I've heard that. But I do that for like the pivotal moments in my character's life. I try to write at least a couple paragraphs from their point of view of what this action was and how it affected them.
That's really interesting, because I feel like the short story that I'm working on right now does both of those things. Like, first of all, it's a short story. I wanted to ease in,
You're not committing to a whole novel here.
Not yet. No, definitely going to take my time. But it's also, this particular story hits on those points. It kind of is the origin story for this character. Now that I'm thinking about it, it really is about where she is currently in her life, where she was, how she got to where she is, all the things that are influencing her state of mind, her decision making at the moment, and then the catalyst will happen, and there might be more of a journey beyond this short story for this character.
I think that is the fundamental good story. Like I was writing, I'm a ridiculous planner. Jocelyn knows this. Everybody knows this. I plan everything. So I am a plotter. But even with these podcasts, I write outlines for all of our shows. And I was trying to say, like, there's different types of origin stories. There's a Superman level. There's an Eddie Man level. And then I got to thinking, and basically exactly what you said, Jocelyn, like, a good story is the character's origin story. That is how they become who they are. Like, they might have a backstory, but that first story, whether it be a novel or a short story or screenplay, whatever, I don't care. That is their origin story. The first season 1 is an origin story. It's how they become who they are. And that is a good story.
Yeah, no, 100%, because that's how we are attached. That's how we become attached to those characters.
You share the experiences with the character.
That's how we become attached to other humans in the world as well. You know, you hear people talk about sharing your personal origin story and how that kind of, well, humanizes, that sounds kind of bleak, but like it does, it humanizes you to other people. People understand where you're coming from, and they might have shared experiences and understandings, and it really is very effective.
Sounds fun.
How about you, Deb? What about your character?
I thought you were going to say, how about you, Deb? What about your origin story? How do you connect with people?
How did you become Superwoman?
The book I'm working on right now that I've been working on for, God, it's like 2 years now. I basically threw out the whole first version of it. I wrote the whole thing and I'm like, this is good, but it needs another character. So I actually have 2 main characters right now.
That's exciting.
It made the story so much better looking at it basically from both angles, which it's adding a whole bunch of work for me. Obviously, it's been like 2 years since I started the damn thing, but in my defense, I do work on 3 stories at a time in a circular manner. But anyways, the characters' origin stories, one's just a guy. His dad was a cop, so he became a cop, and now he's a cop, and now he's come up against something that he doesn't know how to deal with. That is basically his origin story. He was a regular guy, like popular in high school, did basically well in college, you know, basically a good stand-up country boy. The other main character is much more twisted. She comes from a really effed up family. I don't know how much I can say about it. I mean, just that is her origin story, is her family is really screwed up, and then she's coming back to this family place after everyone else is dead. Like, they die in some weird freak explosion, which he's investigating. That's the other end of the story.
Just trauma on top of trauma.
Well, no, she's happy because everybody's dead, because they're all bastards to her. She is. I don't know how else to say it. So
Good
this
riddance.
Character, yeah. They're horrible to her. She has right. Her grandmother was a real bee. I'm trying hard not to swear. So anyways, she's coming from the total opposite of his backstory, where he had a really good childhood. His parents were basically great. He had a good time in high school, and everything was chaos.
Yeah.
So they're going to eventually meet in the middle. Like, he's investigating this weird explosion. She's come back to the family farm, basically being the sole inheritor, and just, the story just kind of unwinds from there. It's a low fantasy story, so there's magic elements to it, which makes it much more interesting. But
oh yeah, mine also has some magical, like surreal vibes, a little bit of fantasy. You know, it's definitely riding that line as well. And also, my story has a similar kind of set. Well, I don't know if I'd say it's not really the setup, but it's my main character is kind of drawn back to a family place where trauma happened, and she has different reasons for being drawn back there. But it definitely is. Her origin story is very rooted in place, and I feel very connected to that idea recently. And this place means a lot to her, and then the place kind of cracks open and reveals itself in a way that would not be expected by her or anybody else.
That sounds very similar to the story I'm writing too, because my character, I'm calling her character 1 right now. she goes back to this place, and it is something very terrible happened to her at this house, and she has to go back there and basically settle the estate because she's the last living person. So yeah, this place where something terrible happened to her is rooted her origin story. Like, that's where this character has to go back to figure out who the hell she is.
I think it would be worth us exploring more in the future this idea of place in story and how that affects our writing.
Place is powerful.
Yeah, I would really love to dig into that a little deeper.
Like, sound is powerful. Place is also very powerful.
Absolutely. I put the two together often. And for this particular short story,
Yes.
music and sound in particular, just sounds, have a lot to do with the place. And that affects the character very strongly. So, yeah.
I could totally see you writing that story. Does your character have a playlist? Have you made her playlist yet?
Yeah. Yes. She works in a bar that has live music. And so there's a lot of, I have a playlist, absolutely.
Yeah. Jocelyn makes playlists for her characters, not playlists for her characters to inspire her about the playlist. She makes her characters playlists. Like, if they had iTunes, and that is their playlist,
like their
on their
mix
version
CD.
of iTunes. Exactly. Yeah, back when mixed CDs used to actually exist.
Exactly. And this is technically a period piece because it takes place in 2011. So yes, she would have a mixed CD in her car.
Oh my God. Okay, well, I think it's time for us to do our book recommendations of the week.
Yes, please.
All right, you want to go first?
Sure. Okay, so I have a book recommendation that I read this book last year. I think last year. The pandemic has kind of skewed my idea of time.
I know. I'm confused. So I think 2019 was last year.
Right,
like,
must have
2020
been.
Just doesn't exist for me.
No, it's a black hole. I read The Vet's Daughter by Barbara Comins at least a year ago, and I have not been able to stop thinking about it since.
Really? I've never read it.
Oh, it's amazing, but it is dark. It's atmospheric. It's pretty brutal. I'm not gonna lie. And trigger warnings for abusive family members and death of a family member and attempted sexual assault and exploitation. Yeah. But Barbara Comins is a master. She's absolutely brilliant, and the skill that she brings into this is just so phenomenal. It's a very short book. It was written in 1959. It's kind of got these subtle gothic vibes, and it's dark magical realism, but absolutely enchanting. And it kind of plays with the idea of if your PTSD developed into a magical power and you weren't entirely sure how to control this power, and then like it gets exploited. Like, that's basically, I don't want to spoil it too much for folks, but I highly recommend it to people who enjoy kind of dark gothic magical realism, that kind of thing.
That sounds awesome. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, it's a really compelling book, and it's a quick read, like I said.
Nice. Okay, well, the one I have picked is, well, kind of like you, it's not dark and brooding, but it's one that once I read it, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Like, it pops up like I'm randomly putting on socks, and I think about this story.
Oh, I love that.
It's Thorn by Intisar Kanani. It's loosely based on the fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm, The Goose Girl, which I have read The Goose Girl a couple of times in a couple different variations because I love fairy tales. But it's very loosely based on it, and it's kind of fantasy. I shouldn't say it's kind of fantasy. It is fantasy. It's not like there's elves, but I mean there's talking horses and there's magic. Like, I think her mother was like a sorceress or something, and something happens, and the main character can't speak for the entirety of the book because of magical something or other happening. Which, weird that there's a talking horse, but
yes,
the horse did not get her voice, I promise.
Not an Ursula situation?
No, not an Ursula situation. Anyways, I actually recently found out the author did a sequel, which I didn't know, and I'm kind of excited about. I already bought it on Kindle, and I haven't actually read it yet because I just got a whole batch of thrift books in, so I'm going through those right now.
Yes.
Oh my God, I love thrift books. Can I just say, today I'm so excited. I got a 1973 copy of The Last Unicorn. I know, right?
Is it the greatest cover ever? Does it look
Yeah.
amazing?
It looks
Oh,
amazing. Like it's like 70s artwork
oh,
and everything, and it's got that old thrift book smell. Anyways,
yes. Oh,
um,
I love it.
so I haven't read the sequel yet because I'm currently working through like a pile of
Mm.
like 9 um, thrift books, most of which are Tanith Lee, who I will get onto later. That I love Tanith Lee so much.
Mm.
Um, but anyways, yeah, I can't wait to read the sequel. It's like number 12 in my list right now because I've got so many books ahead of it. Jocelyn and I have incredible book lists.
Oh my
I don't
lord,
know. Do you
yeah.
still have book lists? Like piles
I
of books that you mean to read?
absolutely.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
I have lists in all the places you can imagine, and then I have physical
Piles,
piles
yeah.
all over. Yeah.
I think there was a point like 2 years ago we were like sending pictures back and forth of what our book piles currently looked like. And
Yeah.
you put the new one on the bottom, so you're always reading from the top down. But yeah,
To have that kind
they
of
get out of
self-restraint.
hand.
Yes, it is a problem. Luckily I'm counting my blessings because right now I don't feel like buying books. So I'm like, oh, lovely, a rare moment where I'm not compelled to buy books. I'm going to ride this wave for as long as possible. And we'll see how many of my actual books I already own that I can get through. So,
I didn't plan on buying all these books, but I do you remember that flood that happened in the Northeast in 2000? I think it was 2011, 2010.
yes. Yeah, I think it was Hurricane Irene or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
My main book collection was on the first floor, and my house got flooded.
Oh no.
And I didn't realize for some reason until now that 2 of my favorite Tanith Lee books were downstairs in that collection. So I went and had to find like the exact same version, like the same. It had to have the same cover, or it just wasn't worth it to me. And then while I was buying those 2 books, which by the way were Knight's Daughter and King of the Night, that's not right. It's not right. Anyways, my brain malfunctioned there. I have found several of her books I hadn't read yet, so I was like, yes, I need that one. I need that one. I need that one. Oh, I love this one. Let's get another copy of this one.
That's so exciting. What an amazing feeling. I love
know.
that.
Like I was reading a couple of them came yesterday, and I flew through like it was a small book, Story of the Mad, the Book of the Mad, something. I think it was the Book of the Mad. It has to be like maybe like 300 pages or something. It's pretty small.
Okay.
Blew through it in a night, and I'm like, oh my god, this is book 4 of a 4-book series. I haven't read the series yet, so I had to go on and get the other 3. They're on
that
their
is
way.
so funny.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious
Yeah.
to do that by accident and be like, oh, shoot,
It's
this
like,
is weird.
I didn't know this happened, and now I have to go buy 3 more books because I'm addicted to books.
Yes. Oh, amen.
So anyways, that is our recommendation for the week. Let's close this up because we're going to get cut off soon.
Curse you, Zoom.
I know. So we're going to put all our notes and examples in the show notes in case anyone's interested in anything we've mentioned. We didn't actually mention that much, but we'll put links that we need to. And that's it for this week. As usual, you can find us on readandwritepodcast.com. And we're on all the socials under the same exact thing, Read and Write Podcast. That's where you can find us. And that's it for this week. Catch us next Wednesday when we're going to talk about
starting new projects.
Until then, stay safe.
Keep reading.
Keep writing.
And go do what you do best.
Nice.